around a little bit. And like most coaches, I'll be talking with my hands. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here driving into town. I just was flooded with memories. I grew up in Hilton, Oklahoma, in a church that's not a whole lot different from this. And it was a great place to be from. I was so blessed to grow up in that small town. So thank you for having me here today. Today is it's a momentous day for Oklahoma. It's the marathon that recognizes and celebrates the renewal of our state after that tragedy almost 3 decades ago. And it's also the day after a horrible string of tornadoes ripped across our countryside and absolutely demolished a few small towns. So I hope that you'll keep them in your thoughts and prayers, those people who are rebuilding, who are hurting, and those towns that are trying to become what they once were. I pray for them, and I hope that you'll keep them in your prayers today as well. So in 2020, when the world shut down, I, like most of you, walked around my house awkwardly in circles trying to figure out what to do with my hands. Didn't know where to go, didn't know what to do, didn't know what to think, was a little bit scared. A couple of days into the pandemic, I got a call from our sports information director, Kenny Mossman, who said, we need some content for SoonerSports.com. That's our website, obviously, that covers all of Oklahoma sports. And more eyes were going to be on it than had ever been on it before because everybody was at home looking for something to do. And the irony that he was faced with was that he had no sports to cover, and that's the content of SoonerSports.com. He knew that I loved to write, so he asked me if I would write an article for SoonerSports.com, and I said, sure. And I sat in a chair that looks out the window of my backyard, and I began to write, and I worked on it for a day, and then I stayed up half the night, and I worked on it some more, and stayed up half that night, and then I polished it the next day, and finally I sent it to him. And it was called An Athlete's Ache, and it was an article about what it felt like to be in the midst of competition and suddenly have everything shut down. And I realized through that process of writing that article for our website that I still loved to write. I grew up as a kid who wrote all the time. I went to a Christian college, got a degree in English and physical education, was a journaler all my life. I taught English before I coached at the University of Oklahoma. When I was a high school basketball coach, I was also an English teacher, so writing had been a big part of my life. But it dawned on me when I did this that for about the last 8 to 10 years, I hadn't written very much. With the advent of cell phones and social media and all the things that recruiting requires, somehow that writing practice had got pushed to the back, and I had forgotten how much I loved it. I had a sign inside my office where players and recruits came in the front door, and it said, what makes your heart sing? And we always talked about that with our student athletes. And I realized one of the things that really made my heart sing was writing. And so I began to write every day. And I coached throughout that pandemic season, that COVID-19 season, and about 3 months later, I'm walking through the entryway of my house, and the world is still tightly shut down. And my house has windows on the east and windows on the west. And I was walking through the entryway, lived there at the time for about 32 years. So it's been even a little bit longer than that now. But I'm walking through the entryway of my house, and the sun is coming through the east window, and it's just lighting up everything in its path. It's that kind of light that doesn't catch the dust particles, so to speak. It just puts a glow on everything. And I stopped in my tracks, and I thought, oh, that is beautiful. I love my house. And then I took a couple of steps and I thought, why have I never noticed that before? The answer was pretty simple. I'd never been home at 9:30 in the morning. Ever. I was working, I was recruiting, I was going to football games, and I wasn't practicing our team. We're traveling with the team on Sundays, I was going to church. I'd never been on the entry of my house at 9:30 in the morning, and I decided right then and there that it was time to chase the passion that I've been carrying in my pocket all those years while I was doing that passion that I love on the sidelines of the Lloyd Noble Center. And I made the decision that it was time to hang up the whistle and try something else for a little while. And so I didn't call my athletic director then, I didn't go tell my husband, but I made that decision in my heart. And at the end of that COVID-19 year, I did that. I walked away from coaching, and I've had an absolute blast since then. One of the things that I did was I began to write every single day, longer and harder than I had during that COVID year. And what came out was a book. It's the book that I have in the back. It's called Rooted to Rise. And I didn't sit down to write that book. I just sat down to write, and that book is what came out. And what that is a collection of stories about people who have impacted my life. Not all of them. I couldn't write a book big enough to fit all of that. But it's a collection of stories about people who made me what I am. I do life today because of my first grade teacher, my son's kindergarten teacher, my grandma, my grandpa, some of the kids that played for me, some of the people I coached with. When we go through life, our life intersects with other lives. And some of the paint gets rubbed off on us, and we are different. We are changed. We are impacted by the people we bump into. I'm here today primarily because of Mo and Richard Anderson. I crossed paths with them. And part of most paint got chipped off on me, and I am grateful for it. Anything this woman asks me to do, I do. That's what the intersection of lives do. That's how they impact you. And so I am honored to be here today with you. And I know many of you in this room, probably most of you in this room, feel the same sort of gratitude for Mo and Richard that I do. In 1996, when I got the head coaching job at the University of Oklahoma, I needed to find some players. We weren't very good. My high school team had been really good. We just won a state championship. Only lost one game the entire year. I inherited this team at the University of Oklahoma, and I just thought, oh my goodness, we have to go recruiting. And so we went recruiting. And except that it was the spring, it was the end of April, and that's a late signing period at the time for women's basketball. And the only players left in the late signing period were players who weren't quite good enough to go to all the other schools, because the other schools signed in the fall, in the early signing period. I was new. I had no recruiting files. I had nothing to go after. I coached a high school team. I wasn't looking at other people's players anywhere. So I immediately began to call people. I called people that I knew in Texas. I called people that I knew in Oklahoma. I called people that I knew in Kansas. I called my old college coach, who happened to know a friend who knew the coach at a small school in Texas, Slayton High School, that had just won the high school state championship in their class. And they had a player on their team that was supposed to go to Texas Tech University because she'd grown up wanting to play for Marcia Sharp, the Hall of Famer there. And at the late signing period, Texas Tech filled their roster. They got somebody else, and Felicia Whaley was left holding the bag. She had nowhere to go, and she had dreamed of being a Division I athlete, and she was still out there waiting, unsigned. It was the end of the signing period. We actually had 2 days, the weekend, for an official visit. And so I called our high school coach, Chris Kennedy, and I asked Chris if she would like to visit, and she said, oh, I think she'd love to. And so I called Felicia and set up a visit, and she and her mom, Sayara, flew to Oklahoma, and I had never seen her play. Now, there were no cell phones then. There were no YouTube videos of kids playing in tournaments. There was no way to see her play a game that had already passed, except through videotape, a VHS tape. And so Chris Kennedy, her coach, put that tape in the mail. In the meantime, Felicia and Sayara got on a plane and flew to Oklahoma City. We picked them up. We had a great visit on the campus of University of Oklahoma. I loved her. She had these big, giant, sincere eyes. Her mother had this free, happy, joyful, bubbly laugh. They were amazed by everything, and there really wasn't all that much to be amazed at about at the time. But they loved the opportunity. They were fabulous people. We sat down in my office and we talked about my dreams for the program, my dreams for her dreams for herself, what she wanted to be a part of. It was a fantastic conversation. And when it ended, I said, Felicia, I have to see game tape before I can offer you scholarship. Felicia was 5'10", maybe 11, and she stood up really tall. And she was a center on her high school basketball team. She played at the block. Her team was very well coached, and she ran down the floor and she got to the block and she posted up, and her guard scored her outstretched hand, and more often than not she caught it and scored it. And when she got fouled, she went to the free throw line and she made free throws. But that is basically what she did as a high school player. I didn't know yet what her skill set looked like, so I told her I have to watch the game tape. I hope you understand. She said, of course I do. Of course I do. And so when it came time to take them back to the airport, we took them to the Oklahoma City airport, and these were the days before you had to stop at the gate and lock everybody out. So we walked through, and we were waiting inside the terminal where the plane pulls up. And Felicia had gone to the restroom, and I went to the restroom, and when I was in one of the stalls, I heard Felicia pray. Her precious heart praying that she would get an offer of a full scholarship to come to the University of Oklahoma. We put Felicia and Sayonara on the plane. I got in the car with my assistant coach and said, oh, it was all I could do to not offer her a scholarship. Right there, she was waiting in the stall. I never seen her play. She was 5'10", she was a center. I waited for the tape. It seemed like they literally put it on a horse in Sladen, Texas, and let the horse jog to Oklahoma. It took forever. We got the tape, and I watched it, and I thought, oh, I don't know. And then I had my assistant coaches watch it, and they said, I don't know. And then I had my husband watch it, I had my neighbors watch it, everybody I could think of was, please watch this tape and tell me what you think. And what was still on the tape was this kid that played really hard and ran down the block and shoved an outstretched hand and guard through the ball, and she made a little shot off the backboard. When she got out, she made a free throw, and that's pretty much what the tape revealed. And I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And finally one day I just said, I'm offering her a scholarship. There's just something about her eyes. My staff was like, okay, I'm sure they're thinking, great. We're going to build a team based on people's eyes. This is going to go really well. But I called Felicia and I offered her a scholarship, and she gleefully accepted. And she and Sayonara and I laughed and cried and prayed on the phone. And a couple of weeks later, she came to the campus of the University of Oklahoma, and Felicia Whaley became the shoulders on which we built our program. She became better than I ever could have imagined she would be. She was special in all the ways that matter most. And in Felicia's senior year, we qualified for the NCAA tournament. It was the first time the women's basketball team had gone, and we won the right to go play on the campus in West Lafayette, Indiana at Purdue University. At that time, the highest 4 seeds got to host on their home court, and Purdue just happened to be the defending national champions from the previous year, and we were sent to their side. We weren't playing them in the first round, we were playing BYU, but if we won, we would play Purdue in the second round. Translation for all that is, it was not a very good draw. We had a really good year, we won the Big 12 conference, but we had our work cut out for us. We went into West Lafayette, Indiana. We made the bus pull over because there was a billboard that said, hosting site for the women's Final Four. We all got out of the ground and they shot a picture of the billboard behind us. We couldn't understand why BYU just went on into the gym. There was a table full of merch out front, and we were buying every kind of shirt and hat you can imagine. The other teams were like looking at it. They weren't buying there. They were planning on buying it at the Sweet 16, right? We didn't know. We were so happy to be there. First game, we beat BYU, and we earned the right to play Purdue on their home floor in the second round of the NCAA tournament for the right to go to the Sweet 16. The game started off a little brutal. They had a great player named Katie Douglas, and she just did whatever she wanted inside our defense. We called timeouts, we changed defensive alignments, we did some substituting, but whatever it was that happened in that first half, we could never really get over the hump. We were in a sold-out arena. Everybody was wearing gold, which is the Purdue color, except for about, 15 people in crimson and cream right behind the bench. The arena was noisy, they were going crazy, Purdue was having their way with us. We went in at halftime, we were down 11, or we were down 12, but it wasn't really quite that close because we hit a 3 right at the buzzer before halftime. And the game really had been, it felt like it was a much greater advantage than, they had much greater advantage than 15 points that it seemed like. And then we hit that 3 and we go in, and we're down 12. Talked to my assistants outside the locker room before we went in. This group was so special. They were the kind of team that you could just tell the truth to. You didn't have to try to come up with anything crazy. You didn't have to try to manipulate them. You just told them the truth, and they could understand it and do something about it. And I think groups that have that trait are confident groups, and this one was. And so I walked into halftime and I said, guys, we got 20 more minutes, and I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. They're really good. And they've been here before, and we haven't. We're really good too, but, they're on their home floor. I don't know what's going to happen. The only thing I know for sure is that you have 20 more minutes to play with P-Dub. That's what we call her, P-Dub. You have 20 more minutes to play basketball with this girl that you love. 20 minutes. So just go love her. With your effort, with your joy, with what you do and where you do it and how you do it. Just love being on the court with this teammate. And we'll see what happens. So we go out in halftime, it's Purdue's ball out of bounds. They score immediately, so the halftime speech was fantastic, obviously. So now we're down 14. We get the ball, we score, they score, we trade baskets for a little bit, and then we get a steal, we get a basket, and we cut the lead a bit. We trade baskets for a little bit, and they foul us and make a free throw. Trade baskets for a little bit more. We look up, and there's 4 minutes left in the game, and we're down 5. This is doable, maybe. We have timeout, we go back out on the floor, we do our business, down and back, down and back. Next thing you know, we have the basketball, we're down 1, and I call the timeout. There's less than a minute left. We're down 1, we got the ball, we can't win. Call timeout, bring them over. I've got the play, right? I got the play. Woo, give that board, drop this play. Beautiful play where I'm going to get our point guard's name is Stacey Dale. She's 6'2". I drew a play where we set a screen. Purdue had been switching the entire game. They've been switching. Set a screen. We're going to get a switch. Going to get rid of the block. We're going to throw it to her. The worst thing that can happen is she'll get fouled. She'll make a free throw. The best thing that can happen, obviously, is that she'll score, make a free throw. The lead will be too great that they can't win. So we go out and we line up perfectly. And we execute this play to precision. Except Purdue does not switch. Then coach too, go figure. And I'm stunned, staying there like, But my players knew how to play, so Stacey Dale took the ball in the middle of the floor, and Lanisha Caulfield ran out high on the wing and showed a close fist, which meant she was going to run a back cut. And Stacey took 2 hard dribbles out, and Lanisha ran a back cut. Stacey laid down a bounce pass. Lanisha shot the layup, which she got hammered on. She didn't make it, but then she made 2 free throws, and we had our first lead. There were only seconds left to play. Purdue went down the floor. They shot a wild 3. We ran down the rebound in the corner, and the final buzzer blew. We had more points than the Boilermakers, but only 15 people in the entire arena were saying anything. It was like a boom. The Purdue folks and I had a chance to leave early because the upside-down pace of the game happened right at the end, so they're just sitting there in stunned silence while about 15 to 20 people absolutely lose their minds. And when the game is over, ESPN has switched with the wraparound coverage, so every station that was carrying different games of ESPN locked the entire game because it was a great upset. Yeah. Teams that win a national championship and then defend their home court do not get beat in the second round. And yet we had done it. And so Beth Mallins goes out to Felicia and I, and she has us there for a stand-up after the game at half court. She has her arm around Felicia, and she says, Felicia, how does this happen? How does this happen? Your program has never been to the NCAA tournament before. You come here and you're playing the defending national champs on their home floor. You're down by 12 at half. It looks dismal. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the game, you win and you're going to the Sweet 16. How does this happen? And Felicia said, a long time ago, we decided that it would. And I remember thinking, you're right. We made little laminated tags, if you will, that said, in March of 2000, we will be playing in the Sweet 16. And we had popped them everywhere. Some kids hung them around the rearview mirror of their car, some put them on their mirror above their sink when they brush their teeth, some put them on the back of their notebook, some put them on their locker door, but we were reminded constantly that there was something that we wanted to do. Now, what we earned by getting to go to the Sweet 16 was an opportunity to go to Virginia and play Connecticut, but we're not going to talk about that today. I'm not going to tell that story. Felicia's shoulders were the shoulders on which we built our culture. And culture is little more than a group of people making a decision about how they're going to behave together. When I think about that story of Felicia, my takeaways are 3. And one is that leaders are made, not born. When Felicia came to the University of Oklahoma, she was pretty shy. She wasn't a big talker at all. She was more of a doer. Holding people accountable encouraging people to be more than they thought they could be, driving others, giving speeches to a team. These are things that were not natural to beat up, but they're things that she learned along the way. There's a character in the Bible, it's a whole lot like that. His name was Moses. When he was born to a family that was marginalized. He was wrapped in a blanket and put into a basket and floated down a river when he was a baby. Fortunately for him, Pharaoh's daughter found him and raised him in their household. But needless to say, Moses was not one of those guys who started with his foot on their base. Wasn't an easy beginning. He had a pretty much normal, non-highlighting adolescence. Kind of grew up as the step kid in the family. He didn't do anything great that anybody knew of. One time he stood up for an Israelite who was getting abused. Kind of a thing like if you're standing by your best friend and somebody says something bad about him, you kind of have to step in and say something. It's that kind of deal. Certainly nothing to give a medal of honor for. He just kind of lived a normal life. And then one day, the Lord said to him, I want you to lead my people to the promised land. And he said, excuse me? You're the wrong dude. And God said, no, I want you to lead the people to the promised land. And Moses said, why would you send me? And the Lord said, because you can do it. And you're going to need to speak to these people. And Moses said, no. I am slow of speech. My tongue is fat. I'm not an eloquent speaker. And the Lord said, I will teach you. And the Lord sent him all kinds of struggles. He gave him a stick that turned into a snake. He told him to go to the houses of the people in the city and to tell them to kill a lamb and put the blood of the lamb on the front porch post. And if they did that, then Jesus would save them. Weird. They told him to create a brass serpent out of a pole and tell people if they looked at it, they would be healed. Weirder still. And Moses did what Jesus asked. And Jesus gave him a mentor, a father-in-law named Jethro, and the circumstances of his life shaped him. They sculpted who he would become as a leader. And Moses took those people and led them out of bondage to the promised land. Amen. God does not call the equipped, he equips the called. Yes. Second takeaway from my Felicia Whaley. Nothing is less important than the score at halftime. In that game, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had not been good in the first half at all. We had not been ourselves. We had gotten in our own way. We were thinking about all kinds of things that we probably shouldn't have been thinking about. And we didn't play very well as a result of that. We had a decision to make at halftime about what to do next. We could have remorse about what happened. We could roll around in it. We could not forgive ourselves. We could not get past it. Or we could decide to do the next best thing. And that's what we decided to do. Reminds me of a character in the Bible whose given name was Saul, and we began to know him as Paul throughout scriptures. He was born a Jew. He was trained as a rabbi. He made a living as a tent maker. His hobby, persecuting the church. He was that guy out in front saying, spit up on Jesus, saying, if you follow him, you are a fool, actually physically demolishing places of worship, leading the charge down the middle of the street, saying, do not worship this man. And one day, Paul's walking on the road to Damascus, and a bright light hits him, and he's blinded. And his heart is softened, and his insides make a U-turn. And when he's in prison, he begins to teach the guards. And he begins to write letters of exhortation to churches. And he begins to teach those who are in prison with him. And when he goes out, he builds churches. He becomes the premier follower of Jesus, his right-hand man, if you will. And his past did not deter him. As a matter of fact, his past fueled him. Praise God. God is writing a story. He knows the ending. Amen. We just have to make sure we give them the pen. Third takeaway from my Felicia Whaley. Nothing is less important, or I just said that, nothing is less important than sport. After the third one is that we're at our best when we remember who we play for. What my team did in the halftime at West Lafayette, Indiana, was they forgot about what they were supposed to do. They forgot about the air ball that they shot, and the foul that they committed, and the play that they botched up, and they thought about how much they loved, admired, and respected Felicia Whaley. And when their eyes were set on her, all the other stuff moved out of the way. And it gave them an opportunity to be the very best version of themselves. That reminds me of a character from the Bible named Peter. So, John the Baptist's head was cut off. King Herod's daughter wanted it on a platter, so King Herod didn't, and Jesus fled. He was heartbroken, he was sad, he was grief-stricken. First thing he did when he went to the base of the mountains was he fed all these people, loaves and fishes, that came in one little basket. He fed thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people with loaves and fishes. And then he sent his disciples out on a ship into the water, and he went up to the mountain to pray, to be alone. And while Jesus was up at the mountain praying, a severe storm came upon the area. And the boat was tossed and bucked about, and the people on the boat, the men on the boat were scared, and they didn't know what to do, and they called out, and Jesus came and he walked across the water toward the boat. And Peter said, I cannot believe this. You're standing on the water. How is that possible? How can you do that? Jesus says, because I'm the Lord. And Peter said, I want to walk too. And Jesus says, come to me. And he steps off the boat and he begins to walk across the water. And then he looks at the wind, and he looks at the waves, and he looks at the boat thrashing about, and he begins to sink. And the Lord says, cast your eyes on me. And he does, and he begins to walk on the water again.
Praise God.
It is so easy to forget what to do with our eyes. We could go fast. There's all kinds of noise, there are all kinds of annoyances, there are all kinds of distractions, and when we take our eyes off God, we lose our way.
Amen.
God is standing right in front of us all the time.
Thank you.
All we have to do is look. When I was driving up this morning, I was thinking about Felicia and Sayonara and that special team, and about the fact that you have to remember who you play for, and you absolutely have to understand that nothing is less important than the score at halftime. And you have to know that leaders are made, they're not born. They're made by what they go through. And as I was thinking about all those things that wrapped around with what's going on in my world right now, my youngest child, my daughter, just got engaged to be married. And I was thinking about the wedding and all the things and what a wedding stands for and what happens that is of significance there. And I thought about my wedding vows that happened almost 37 years ago. And the theme of our wedding vows was choices. Now, I'm ashamed to tell you I don't remember very much of them at all, except I do remember this one sentence that we said, which was, nothing is easier than saying the words, nothing is harder than living them.
Right.
And I thought about that this morning as I was driving up here, because every day in a marriage is a recommitment. Every day is a stinking dogfight. You have to decide and choose every day. You know what else is just like that? The Christian life. We all mess up.
Amen.
And it's so easy to think, oh, it's not even worth it. I just dropped the ball. Yesterday I dropped the ball. Today I'm probably going to drop the ball tomorrow. No, you get up every day and you recommit and you try again. And you choose Jesus. My prayer is that you will, and that He will help me continue to make that choice. It's been an honor and privilege to be with you this morning. God bless you.